Hello, my name is Lynn Carson. I'm a speech and language pathologist. I'd like to welcome you to the e-learning video, Getting Babies and Toddlers Talking, Why What You Say and Do Matters to a Young Child's Growing Language Skills. All right, why should you watch this video as a parent? Why should you watch this video today? When I had my children and I was going around and doing mommy groups with them and stuff, I met a lot of new moms and it was great. And when they found out what I did for a living, a lot of times they said to me, oh yeah, I know, you just need to talk to your baby all the time and they'll have great language skills. And that's talking to your baby is wonderful. I want to just, go on record by saying that you should definitely talk to your baby often. But it is actually the quality of talk and the quality of the interactions that a parent has with their young baby or young child that really can make a powerful difference to a child's language development. In fact, the kinds of responses parents make to their children's early sounds and their early words makes a big difference. And we're going to learn more about that in this video today. So the goals for today will be, firstly, to learn more about baby and parent communication styles and how that is going to have an impact on your child's overall language learning. And we're going to talk about turn taking. I'm going to take you back to preschool and we're going to find out why taking turns with your baby is really important for their language development. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what kinds of responses are best for language learning. All right. As many of you know, every single baby is different. Each baby comes into the world with their own unique personality and your own unique communication style, and that's going to affect how, when, and why they talk. And I've done a couple other videos, one on kind of how to predict first words, that it's not as random as we think. So you can go on and have a look at those for more detail about that. But in this video, I'm going to talk about communication styles, and the Hannon Center has done a lot of work around this, so I encourage you to go to the Hannon Center website and look at that for more information. But I'm just going to go over the 4 styles that they outline in young children. Firstly is the social communication style, and this is a child who starts interactions very easily, very social. They'll respond back to other people very easily. Then you have the reluctant communication style. They maybe a little bit slow to warm up. They're not going to be the first one to start an interaction, and they may find it easier when after someone comes and maybe starts the interaction with them. Then you've got the passive communication style. They rarely respond. They rarely initiate. They're just more laid back, more observers. And then the own agenda. They kind of do their own thing. They generally tune others out and they play on their own. It's difficult to get a response from these guys. As your baby grows, as an infant, they each have their own unique personality, but it's really when they get a little older and into the early toddler years that you can see these communication styles really start to emerge. And that's going to really start to impact how you respond to them. All right, well, communication takes 2 people, and we as parents come to the table with our own unique personalities and our own unique communication styles. And the Hannon Center has outlined a few communication styles that parents would maybe fall into. Now, I really do encourage you to go to the Hannon Center and look at these in more detail. So I'm not going to go over each one here today. But generally, parents find that they are maybe a couple of these styles. So I will let you know that I am a mover. I like to do things fast, really quickly, get things done. And I'm also a bit of a director. Especially when my second child came along, I did a lot of get your shoes, close the door, go get dressed, a lot of directing to get things done. My husband falls into the entertainer role. He really likes to keep the kids smiling all the time and really kind of takes the lead in the interaction. And sometimes, especially when they were infants, he fell into the watcher role because he really, especially when our first daughter came along, he really wasn't sure how to get that interaction going with her. So he found it easier to just watch, and he talked a little bit to her while she was there, but he really didn't join in very much. So have a look and decide what you think you might be. So a lot of those communication styles that you saw in the previous slide are really not the best for language learning. Now, this is just the way we are. We just happen to fall into these styles. It's just part of our unique personalities. So if you do find yourself identifying with one of those styles, know that that's okay, but know that maybe that isn't the best for your child's growing language development. And there is a style that the Hannon Center talks about called the tuned-in parent. And this would be the type of communication style that would be optimal for language learning. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like being very knowledgeable about your child's interests and their abilities. You're very clear on what they like and what they can do. You understand their needs, but you also understand that they're growing and you help them kind of move on to the next stage or next level. And you do this generally by giving them opportunities to take the lead. You're not doing everything for them. They start to become the leaders of the interactions, but you're still very close and you respond immediately to the interactions that your child is leading. This really isn't as tricky as it sounds. In fact, a lot of parents really are this tuned-in parent, and a lot of parents are really doing these things at least sometime during the day with their child. You can't be this way all the time. There are, safety definitely comes first, so that would not be a time where you would be trying to be a tuned-in parent. But there are other things that happen in the day. You need to put your attention towards another child or another activity that you need to do. So it's not something that can be done all the time, but just being aware that this type of communication style that really does encourage interaction and your baby taking the lead in the interaction is super for language learning. So what's the difference? What's the key? Why can't I still be a mover and my baby will develop strong language skills? Why can't my husband just be a watcher and my baby develop strong language skills? And it's because those kinds of roles generally don't offer turns, communicative turns with the baby, between the baby and the parent. In fact, there's been so much research come out recently on turn taking with infants and turn taking with toddlers and its relationship to language development. So we know that children who have experience with more conversational turns actually have greater activation in the language area in the brain. It's also more likely that in these back and forth turn taking that a parent will use child-directed speech, which we know is beneficial for language learning, especially in the early years, in the under 18 months. And if you want, you can have a look at some of my other videos on how infants crack the language code. And I talk a lot about child-directed speech, infant-directed speech there. But conversational turns is so powerful for a child, mainly because it gives them an opportunity to practice their growing language skills, whatever stage they are in. And we're going to have a look at that in more detail in some videos. All right, turn taking. How do I take turns with an infant? How can I do that? I'm going to show you a video of my mom and my son Cameron. Cameron is about 3 or 4 months old in this video, and my mom is playing a game with him with this toy, and it's a great turn-taking game. So as you watch the video, I'd like you to think about what kinds of things my mom does in her turn, and then what kinds of things Cameron does in his turn, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Well, it did. Yes, it did. He's waiting for it to go. Watch.
So just a short video there. So my mom's turn looks like her putting that little toy down for Cameron. Cameron's turn is to try and reach for it. And then her next turn is to pull it away and say, oh, and Cameron's turn is to giggle, and they both have a laugh together. And they went back and forth like that for a while. And in this very simple activity, Cameron is learning a lot of things. He's learning a lot about joint attention, and I do another video that talks more about joint attention, so I'd encourage you to look at that if you want to learn a little bit more. But he's making eye contact with my mom, and they're both looking at the toy together. He's also learning some things about social communication here. He's making eye contact with my mom, smiling and laughing, and they're having a social interaction. And he's learning how to take some turns. And these things are all what we would call foundation skills. So Cameron can get really good at these and use these to become a really good communicator later on. All right, you can kind of get to see what turn taking looks like maybe in these early months. So here's a little bit of a step-by-step for how you can kind of get started with this at home with your baby. So firstly, let's talk about the parent's turn. Number one, you need to join in. So if you're a watcher, you have to really leave that watcher role and join in with your young baby. Babies at this age are really social and really interested in people. And if they're in the over 4-month mark, you can add a few objects in. Although my son was really interested in this object that my mom was shaking for him, he was much more interested in the social he was having with her. But the very first thing she did was try and join in an activity with him and come face to face. The next thing is to observe your child's interests. Okay, so Cameron was really interested. I think before this interaction started, he was holding this toy and he was really interested in this toy. So she used that in the interaction. And then she also did some sounds here. If I was to critique my mom, I would have had her put a little bit more language in, but she's done a wonderful job getting those back and forth turns in, and she's got that change in tone of voice, which is really impactful for an infant this age. So, what's your baby's turn going to look like? Okay. As an infant, your baby is really going to be using either eye gaze or they're going to be using their body. You can see Cameron reaches up and that's his turn. We wouldn't expect him to do much more than that for his turn. He's adding in some smiles and laughs, and that's his turn. As he gets a little older, maybe he's making more speech sounds, and then we would kind of expect or wait for him to add some sounds into his turn as well as some body movement. And maybe even older than that, we would expect a word or something close to a word. All right, so we've gone through the step-by-step. You've seen the video. I think you can start to get an idea of how to start a turn-taking game with your child at home. But I thought I would go over a little bit about the responses that you can give to your child that will encourage them to respond back to you and kind of get into that reciprocal turn-taking back and forth. So imitation is one of them. Babies love to be imitated, their sounds and their words, particularly babies in the babbling stage. Comments are also really good idea, okay? So making short comments about what your baby is doing or seeing or what you are doing, going with your baby's interests. It provides a good language model for them, and it encourages them to make a response back. Questions are also really good. Not too many questions, though. When you use too many questions, you move into that kind of tester role. So a few questions are good. Questions during book reading can always be great. You know, where's the hat? Touch the dog. A few of those would be really nice to incorporate in that activity. Now, here are a few examples of responses that don't encourage that kind of back and forth turn taking. One would be a very non-specific response. So things like, oh, right, thank you. I see thank you a lot. If a young toddler comes over and gives something to a parent, generally the first thing the parent says is thank you. And actually, when you have a young toddler in the language learning stage, a better language boosting response would be maybe a comment. So if they brought you over the keys, maybe you say, keys. Oh, these are mommy's keys for the car. You know, and you make a small comment about that. And then it really starts to help that child learn more about the meaning of that object and maybe a little more language that could go along with it. Also, responses that change the topic your baby is interested in. So say, for example, we are in, you and your baby are in a ring stacker activity and you're trying to do that together, and then your baby goes and gets a ball. So they've changed the topic, but you won't change with them. So you want to continue to talk about the ring stacker and you continue to change the topic that your baby is interested in, which is now the ball. So that's really going to shut down the turn taking there. Or giving no response at all. Maybe your child comes over and passes you something and you just take it. And then that really shuts down that turn taking response there. Even if turn taking is just one or two simple exchanges, it's really powerful and should be encouraged throughout the day. All right, I'll let you have a look at another video of my son Cameron. He's about 14 months old here, and he was doing lots of turn-taking exchanges with me from birth. And so I'd like you to watch for how fluent he is at his turn-taking. He's been doing it for so long and in so many different activities with me that he's really good at being taking his turn in conversation. I'd like you to, again, pay attention to what I'm doing as the adult for my turn and what Cameron is doing for his turn now that he is a little older and he's been able to practice a lot. Are you hungry for pasta? Pasta's your favorite?
Mommy.
Yes, Cameron.
Yes.
That is sticky. Sticky pasta? Hi. That's Addison's milk. Addison's milk. And Cameron's milk. Yeah, that's Cameron's milk. And Addison's milk. And Cameron's milk. Cameron's milk. Yeah, good job. Cameron's milk. And your pasta. Tasty pasta. More pasta? You've got lots of pasta. Lots of pasta. More pasta. Is that tasty pasta? Tasty, tasty pasta. Looks good, bud. Looks good. So you can see us having a little chat at what might have been lunchtime, and my turn looked pretty verbal. I was talking to him, and I was looking at what he was looking at, but it was a lot of a verbal turn. And Cameron's turn was a lot more verbal here as well. He was using a lot of words to try and go back and forth with me. But I was doing a few other things that really looked like that tuned in parent communication style. So I was noticing his interests, and I chose the topic of his pasta because he was really into his pasta, as you can see it all over his face there. So I thought maybe that would be something he wanted to talk about. And I let him lead the interaction. He moves over to talk about the milk. There must be another milk cup sitting on the table, and he wants to talk about that. And so we switch, and I switch the conversation to that as well, and we can have some turns about that. And I'm also giving a lot of those responses that really encourage this back and forth interaction to continue. So first and foremost, I'm doing a lot of waiting. My turn is short. And I don't know if you can notice because the conversation does seem fairly fluid, but I'm actually waiting. I'm taking my turn, having my sentence, and then I wait. And Cameron has been able to pick up on that signal, that pause, that it's going to be my turn now. And he comes back with a verbal response. I'm imitating him. He says pasta. I say, oh, pasta. And then I add another comment back. Oh, that's tasty pasta. And I think a really great thing to notice here as well, though, so Cameron is pointing to his sister's milk, and I say, oh, that's Addison's milk. And he points to his. That's Cameron's milk. And then we wait and we do it again. And he picks up so much that he even tries to put a little two-word combination together, and he gives a milk. And that's because I have chose those responses that really try and encourage that back and forth interaction. So Cameron's learning a lot here as we chat about his pasta. He's got joint attention still developing as we talk about the pasta and talk about the milk and the things he's looking at and interested in. He's doing really well with his conversational turns, and he is certainly learning a lot about language and even starting to put some two words together. All right, so we've talked a lot about parent communication styles and how to be more of that tuned in parent communication style, the responses parents can give. But don't forget, babies come to the table with their own unique communication styles themselves. Cameron was a very social communication style. It was easy to engage him in these back and forth turns. My daughter was a little bit different. She was much more reluctant. You really needed to have a relationship with her. She really needed to warm up to you before she was going to engage in these. And that's okay. So being aware of that is going to help you get into these back and forth turns with your baby. I think the first thing we need to be aware of is babies are going to need maybe some help, a little bit of a signal to know that it's going to be their turn. So you can use your facial expressions and your body language to show that they're expected to do something. I've got this image here of this baby with her mom, and she's down face to face, and you can just tell by her body position, her body language, that she is looking expectantly at her daughter. Her daughter's going to catch that ball, and she's going to look at her mom, and her mom's body language and facial expressions will send her that signal that she is expected to do something. And people suggest using a visual helper. So that's just an object that is kind of a cue that the babies are supposed to do something. So maybe if mom in this image had a basket, she could use that as a visual helper and hold up the basket to try and show, oh, you need to throw the ball in here. It's your turn to throw the ball in the basket. Babies also get really tuned into routines very, very young, very early on. And taking pauses or little breaks in these routines signals to them that maybe they should do something too. Peekaboo is a great example of that kind of routine. So as you play peekaboo more and more with your child, they become familiar with the routine, and then you take these pauses. Maybe you take a pause while you're holding the blanket, maybe you don't immediately put the blanket over your head to hide yourself. And this pause and break in the familiar routine gives your baby a chance to maybe take a turn. They maybe will pass you the blanket as a way to take a turn to signal to you they would like to start the routine. Questions are also good, but remember, too many questions is not great for turn taking. But giving your baby a choice of two is a really great way to help them know that it's their turn. So maybe you come up to your story time routine, and instead of just grabbing a story, maybe you offer them a choice of two books. You know, I want this book A or book B, and then your baby gets that signal that they need to pick one, they need to take a turn before that story time will happen. All right, you have learned a lot today about communication styles and turn taking and how that supports language development. To get started, why don't you pick one activity that you know your child really loves to do and really see what the turn taking looks like in that activity. Is it a really great back and forth interaction, or could it be a little bit better? Maybe it's playing together with one of their favorite toys, like you saw my mom do with Cameron. Maybe it is book reading, where you take a turn pointing things out and making comments. Or maybe you take a pause in a routine. Maybe your toddler really likes nursery rhymes, and instead of just finishing the nursery rhyme for them, you take a pause at one of their favorite parts, and maybe they add in a word, and that starts becoming more of a turn-taking routine versus you just reciting the rhymes. And then try and think of another point in your daily routine where you could add a little bit more turn taking. You saw that turn taking happened with my son Cameron and I just during mealtime. So instead of me trying to rush around and have my lunch, which remember, we can't be a tuned in parent always. There are definitely days where I rush around and had my lunch. But at that time, I tried to stop and have a really nice interaction with Cameron, a nice turn-taking interaction around mealtime. And maybe you can find some more times in the day that you can do that as well. And then just be aware of communication styles for you and your baby. Talk about it with your other family members. I told my husband that he was more of a watcher, and he didn't realize what kind of impact his own communication style had on our children's language learning. So talk about it with your family and see what ideas you guys have to discuss together. The Hannon Center really is a super resource, so I encourage you to go to their website. But they also put out this really fantastic video on why interaction matters to language learning, and it's excellent. So I put the link there if you want to go and have a look. And then there's another link to the still face experiment with the baby. So that's just to give you an idea about how babies are really aware, even early on, about being a tuned-in parent versus when you're not. It's a really cute little video. It's not too long, so have a look at that if you are interested. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like to provide feedback or comments or have some questions, you can go to the Talking Together website. Thank you.